welcome to the Practical Patriot, where here I cling to my Bible and my gun. We gotta love it. We got a lot of handguns in this house, and this is our new one. It's fun. It's little and tiny, and it fits right in my hand. Anyway, so today I am here to do a part 2 of Only a Virtuous People. I didn't think I was going to be doing a part 2, but felt in my prayer time this morning that I needed to do a part 2. So one of the questions that someone posed to me yesterday is that I talked a lot about despotism. And the person asked me, what does that even mean? What does despotism mean? And so I figured I would give you the definition of despotism. So despotism comes from a word called, from a singular word called a despot. And that refers to a person. And the definition of a despot is a ruler with absolute authority, or one exercising power tyrannically, a person exercising absolute power in a brutal or oppressive way. And some synonyms to a despot is a Caesar, dictator, Führer, oppressor, pharaoh, strongman, and tyrant. So that is a definition of a despot. And so my dog is being very annoying today. So if you're seeing me throwing dog toys, that's what I'm doing, throwing dog toys to the dog. So when we talk about despotism and despotic governments, we talked about a despotic electorate yesterday. When we talked about, that's not what our founding fathers fought for, correct? They did not fight for all of the powers of government to be put in one place. And that is what the current people in government, at least some of them, are trying to do, to get all the power on one side in order to oppress the minority. So, living in Wyoming, we see that often because we are such a remote state, flyover country, as lots of people like to say, and Wyoming is a beautiful place to live. We love living here. I'm wearing my 307 first. 307 is our area code here in Wyoming. We only have one area code, aren't we lucky? And so this is a group that advocates for buying Wyoming first. So if you have the opportunity to shop local, that is what this is all about. Is you sign a little thing that says, yes, I will do my best to shop local whenever possible, and it is great. Okay, go lay down. Seriously, go lay down. So, talking about despotism, that was the definition I just gave. So we're going to talk about a virtuous people once again. I'm going to read a couple of things from the founders. I'm going to read a little bit out of Federalist 51, and I actually am going to get a little bit spiritual on you today, and talk about virtue and morality and what we are not doing well at in America. Now, I come from a Christian perspective because I am a follower of Jesus, and I know a lot of people aren't, and that's fine. You don't have to if you don't want to, but that's what I believe, and that's where a lot of our ethical things in America come from, is a Judeo-Christian worldview. And I think it's important to note that because America is founded with that kind of principles, we have a different mindset. Even the compassion that we often see extreme on the left-hand side of the political aisle, they obviously wouldn't think it's extreme, but sometimes the conservatives think it's a little extreme. Their compassion on others' happiness, right? Well, do unto others as you would have them do unto you is not a universal kind of a thing, right? And we think that a lot in America. We want to do unto others as we would like to be how we would treat others the way we would like to be treated, right? Well, that is not always normal in many countries in the world. I was talking yesterday about theft towards the end of the video, and I am just praying that our country doesn't turn into a kleptocracy. Where it's a word I heard on a video one time. I thought that was so great. A kleptocracy, where you steal to get what you need, and nobody can get ahead, and businesses can't be run well because people just steal. And then all the nepotism, where your family comes in and you give them, they expect you to give them things for free. I'm a musician, and I rarely do anything for free unless I feel like I should. But if I had a family member want to hire me, they could hire me. Someday I'll have to get my harps in the picture. So, a virtuous people. I'm going to read a couple of quotes here. George Washington said, "The power under the Constitution will always be in the people. It is entrusted for certain defined purposes and for a certain limited period to representatives of their own choosing. And whenever it is executed contrary to their interest or not agreeable to their wishes, their servants can and undoubtedly will be recalled." And then Thomas Jefferson said, "On every question of construction, let us carry ourselves back to the time when the Constitution was adopted, recollect the spirit manifested in the debates, and instead of trying what meaning may be squeezed out of the text or invented against it, which has happened a lot since the Constitution was written, conform to the probable one in which it was passed." So read the Constitution as written and don't try and squeeze stuff out of it. And there's plenty of websites out there where you can get a free pocket Constitution, and I would suggest that you do that and educate yourself on what the Constitution actually says. It's very simple. I love my little tiny pocket Constitution. Virtuous people, part 2. So yesterday our quote was what? Only a virtuous people are capable of being free. And the more despotic and corrupt we get, the more we need a master. Well, I, for one, don't want a master. I can take care of myself. Thank you very much. And I know most of my Wyoming people would say the same thing. We'll take care of ourselves. Thank you very much. Stay out of it, government. So today I kind of want to talk about what is happening. You know, I talked about yesterday a lot of different things regarding what virtue is. Let's see if I can find my notes from yesterday. I should have thought of this before I started. That's all right. No, they're not in this notebook. Of course they're not. Oh, yes, they are. Only a virtuous people. There it is. So my notes yesterday, virtue, right? What does virtue mean? Conformity to a standard of right or morality, right? Morality, valor, merit, potency, chastity, and I added selflessness. So those things, morality, valor, merit, potency, being potent in what you say. It's hard to do that when you're living like poop. It's not a very nice word to say, but whatever. So what is happening in the world today because of our lack of virtue? We talked about yesterday self-preservation, right? What do we do to achieve self-preservation? We lie, we cheat, we covet, we practice infidelity, to preserve ourselves and what we think we need. We steal. That's the other thing. Thank you. So here's an example. How do we teach virtue? Well, I would say a lot of people get their virtue taught to them at home or at church. And because of, I know this is a very touchy subject, but because God was ripped out of the schools all those years ago, when they stopped having Bibles in school and they stopped praying in school, they were getting at least some kind of moral compass at school if they weren't getting it at home. Because the further we get in history here, the more godless our society is becoming. And that is not a good thing. We read that yesterday. In some of those letters that I read from Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, and in the Federalist Papers. Is religion going to stop people from being despotic? No, it's not. But at least we can get some kind of moral compass. And even if you aren't a person of a Christian faith, if you have any kind of faith, you are getting some kind of moral standard to abide by. And in America, our judicial system is based off of the Judeo-Christian worldview. Right and wrong. If you're ever in Du Bois, go to the Cowboy Cafe. Their pie is insane. So what are they doing right now during COVID? Not here in Wyoming, thank goodness. There are a number of churches that are being shut down. Isn't that correct? Churches are being closed, or there's being being allowed to do virtual church, or they're having to do drive-in church, or people aren't going to church at all. I've said to some of my pastor friends that it's like God in this time is sifting out the wheat with his winnowing fan to see who really is going to stick with God and who is not. But even if you aren't a person of faith, having virtue is important. Having a sense of right and wrong. And that is sometimes where we get off. What is right? Everybody's definition of right is different if they're not following one way or another. Is murder right? I would say no. I would hope most people would say no. Is theft right? I would say no. Some people would say it depends on the circumstance. And I would say no, theft isn't right. Just like murder. Murder is wrong. Well, somebody might say, well, it depends on the circumstance. I don't know. I don't think it does. I don't think it depends on the circumstance. Things like murder and theft are wrong. How about lying? We talked about being deceitful and lying to get your way in order to preserve yourself. Is that right? Is lying a good thing to do? No. We read that yesterday. What is that phrase that we have learned since we were children? Honesty is the best policy. It's true. Honesty is the best policy because when you don't lie, you don't have to worry about what you said yesterday. You don't have to worry about continuing the lie. Why lie? That's my philosophy. Lying is dumb and you shouldn't lie because then you have to keep it up. You have to continue to keep that lie up. I was never a good liar. My parents would tell you that. That's why I quit doing it a long time ago. Because there isn't a point. There isn't a point to lying. You always get found out in the end. The Bible is clear on that. I'm going to read that in a minute. So, there's also a lack of discipline happening in America. We are not teaching virtue in school. We're not disciplining kids anymore. A lot of kids that I see running around just need a good spanking. I'll be honest. Sometimes I see kids throwing a fit, yelling at their parents, calling people names, and I just look at that child and go, boy, if you were mine, you would have a red butt because you would have gotten a spanking and gone to your room. And my children are very well behaved because of it. I haven't had to spank anybody in a very long time because they learn right away that I don't like this discipline, so I'm going to obey. And that's a good quality to have. So I wanted to talk about fake virtue, right? We see a lot of that in society today. We see what's called virtue signaling, right? I'm sure you've probably heard that word, virtue signaling. For example, virtue signaling would be let's say after George Floyd died, people were posting a black screen on their Facebook or their Instagram or their Twitter account. They were posting just a black screen saying, I am in support of Black Lives Matter. Do Black Lives Matter? Of course they do. Of course they do. But those people posting that thing, what are they doing about it? Are they doing anything, or are they just posting a black square saying, I'm virtuous, I agree? Black screens. Do something about it. Help your neighbor. If you live in an area where people need help and people are in poverty and people are in crime, help them. I'm sure in most communities there is some kind of an organization that is doing good for the community. I happen to go to one of those, and I happen to work at a ministry here in Wyoming called Foundations for Nations, and we work with people on the reservation and with the poor in our own communities. Our church is about half white, half Native, and it is wonderful, and we love it. I was just at a meeting today talking about it with our pastor, and she and I were before that at the food pantry. Feeding people, and luckily we had a couple of of our fellow ministry workers who came and took our place so we could go to our meeting to tell other people about the plight in our own backyard. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. Another instance of virtue signaling. I think that all of the people kneeling before others who happen to say, I have been persecuted, I have had prejudice put against me, and you need to kneel to apologize. You need to kneel before me to grovel in apology for your whiteness. And I think people who kneel to that kind of stuff, that's virtue signaling. You're saying, oh yes, I submit. Prejudice is prejudice no matter what color you are. It doesn't matter. So that comes to the definition of virtue, morality, right? Okay, so what are some of the things that we struggle with in America? I talked about some of them yesterday. Drunkenness. Drunkenness is not a virtue. Because what happens when you're drunk? You get out of control. You make bad choices. A lot of people who get drunk, they have crazy escapades with other people of the opposite sex or the same sex, and they get pregnant, or they get a disease, or they are unfaithful to their partner. Drug use, which I talked about yesterday as well. For example, in Seattle, or another example on our reservation, there's a lot of drunkenness and drug use, and it's a cyclical, destructive cycle that people get stuck in from generation to generation. Infidelity is one of those things that comes from a lack of morality. The idea of being with one person and sticking with them, just like eagles. Do you know that eagles do that? Eagles find a partner and they mate for life. And God's best plan is for us to do the same. Stick with one person. It's easier. Hatred, that's another one. How much hatred is there in America right now? Hatred is not a virtue. Being full of hate and rage. How many people watching this have seen All the Rage this summer? And All the Rage for the last 4 years at our president. And I will even say the rage before that. There was a lot of hatred towards the president before President Trump. President Obama, a lot of people didn't like him either. And I don't think we should be rageful against one another. It's not a virtue to have hatred in your heart towards your fellow man. Deceit, that's the other thing. Lying, right? The lying liars who lie in politics and in the media and in our everyday life. Don't do it. Abortion. Touchy subject, I know. But that is not virtuous. It is not virtuous to end a life inside of a mother. It isn't. There are so many procedures now that can save the life of a baby that in most cases, by the time a mother would have some kind of complication with birth at 20 whatever weeks that could put her life in danger, a lot of times they can save that baby. You don't need to abort the baby. It's a baby. I posted a picture of two of my children one day. I think it was a couple years ago. I want to say it was 2019, maybe early 2019, 2018. I wore black for a month after they passed the total up to birth abortions, and they voted against the Stand for Life Act in Congress that they kept trying to, the Born Alive Act, right? They kept voting that down, and I was so upset, and I was so grieved in my spirit that I just wore black for a month because I couldn't handle it anymore. And then actually changed. I have a small business. I brew kombucha and sell it at the farmers markets here in Wyoming, and changed my whole logo in order to support life. My logo is I don't have any here. It's like a pregnant belly with a heart in the middle of it, and a portion of my proceeds go towards the local pro-life clinic here in Riverton, and called Abba's House, and they give pregnancy support to people to try and turn them away from abortion. I think that is one of the most unvirtuous things we do in our society today, is take the life of those who don't have a voice yet. And it is a life, because we are all clumps of cells. I'm still a clump of cells. You're still a clump of cells. A baby in the womb. Hello, I'll be back. That was an Amber Alert on my phone. Was talking about us all being clumps of cells from pre-birth to death. That's one thing that I love about the Wyoming Republican Party, is when they say the Pledge of Allegiance, they add at the end, and by the way, I'm going to give a little Pledge of Allegiance lesson right here, okay? We're going off on all kinds of tangents today. I love it. When you say the Pledge of Allegiance, you need to remember there's not a comma in between one nation and under God. So when you say the Pledge of Allegiance, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Wyoming Republican Party ends it with liberty and justice for all, born and unborn. I love it. I love it. We have to stand up for the unborn. Another part of lack of virtue in America that we should try and work on changing is ignoring the poverty in our own country. So some of this ties into my own personal views on immigration. I don't think that immigration is a bad thing. I think illegal immigration is a bad thing. But I think that we need to be careful how many people we're letting in, because we can't take care of our own people that we have. And we're letting in so many people a year. And I know that is a touchy subject for a lot of people, because they think that we should be welcoming. They think that we should have open borders and let everyone in who wants to come and make America their home. But what does that do to our own citizens? And what does that do, in my case, with the ministry I work with? What does that do to our own Native American populations? They were here first, even before us. And they are, a lot of the reservations in America are extremely full of poverty. And many of people in America turn a blind eye to that. They turn a blind eye. They don't want to see it. They don't care. A lot of people don't know what a problem it is, because we live here right next to the Wind River Indian Reservation. We see it firsthand all the time. When we first moved into our house, we had a gentleman who was drunk walk right in our front door and sit on our couch like he was gonna pass out on our couch. And luckily, Ryan was here. And he shooed him out of the house, and he was very compliant, thank the Lord. A couple weeks after that, we had a couple people trying to break in. Same situation. We even had to use that gun, one of those guns that we have in our house, to protect our home. But ignoring the problem is not a solution. We have, like I said, I was privileged to go to a meeting today with our pastor, and we were talking about the ministry. We have a food pantry, and we feed hundreds of people a month. Over the last year, I believe she said we have fed 13,000 people. Some of those mouths I think are double, a lot of the same people come back, but we count every mouth for the food bank of the Rockies. And so we have fed that many people during this crisis that we've had through food drives and the food pantry. And now we have a clothing closet that is free that people can come and get clothes at. We have all sorts of people coming into the pantry, from the homeless to the people who just got laid off and don't know what to do and are embarrassed because they've never been to a food pantry before. Find a ministry in your own community and serve it. That's one of my things that I'm big on in regards to virtue, right? Selflessness, serving others. Find an organization, find a ministry. Even if you're not a Christian, you can still work with a ministry who's feeding the poor because they're already doing it. You just have to find them. I know that Ruby's Pantry in Minnesota, was that Burnsville maybe? They are doing great work. I know Substance Church in Minneapolis is doing great work with that. Here, Foundations for Nations here in Wyoming. And I'm sure wherever you're watching this, you could Google any ministry in your town and find somebody who's doing something. And if they aren't, you do it. Because that's where we start. That's where we make the change, is we start it in our own communities, serving our own poor, because they're here. And bringing in tons and tons of immigrants is not going to help us take care of our own people. It isn't, because there's not enough housing. There's not enough housing as it is. On our reservation alone, there is a housing shortage of about 600 homes. There are so many multi-generational people living together, all in the same home, 9-10 people, from grandmas, grandpas, moms and dads, and kids and grandkids, all together in one place, because there aren't enough homes on the reservation. And 30%, well, the last statistic we had was 30% of the homes on the reservation don't even have running water. And that's not necessarily always because it's broken. It's because there's not even a well. There's not even a well. And who knows that information? Not very many people. And isn't that a shame that we don't take care of our own people in our own country first? America first. We need to take care of our own people before we take care of other people. That's part of the problem I'm having with this HR 133 omnibus bill that I talked about yesterday, is all the money that's going towards other countries. Why? We have so many people hungry in our own country. We need to stop that. We need to stop it. Abuse. That's one of the other things, of course. Violence, violent physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse, all of those things. Not virtuous. Not things that we need to be doing in America. One of the statistics here in our area, I know that a lot of people have heard about the missing and murdered Indigenous women advocacy that's been going on, because it's such a problem on the reservations in America, that Native women are raped and murdered and missing, and nothing gets done about it. It's not just the women, it's the children. We see a lot of kids who are growing up in abusive households, neglected. And that's one of the things that we, the ministry that I'm involved in, does a kids programming in the summer for kids, and to give them a safe place to be, because home isn't safe. And right now with COVID, home really isn't safe because there's not any school going on. And a lot of those homes don't have reliable internet, so they're not learning. It's a tragic situation that nobody talks about. And that's a shame. We need to be talking about that problem. So one of the virtues, how do we well, no, I'm not going to talk about how we combat it yet. Yes, I am going to talk about how we combat it. Teaching our children to be virtuous, teaching them that human life has value, no matter if it's preborn or almost dead. The elderly have value. The preborn have value. We shouldn't be supporting despotic governors who put people in nursing homes with COVID and put the COVID patients into the nursing homes. You probably all know who I'm talking about. And what happens? A lot of the older population has passed away because it's a dangerous virus for people who are over a certain age and who have comorbidities. It's the worst place you could put somebody is in a nursing home. I cannot believe that they did that. Honestly, I can't believe it. It just boggles my mind. I'll be right back. Hello, I'm back again. I had to go pick up my kids from school. So I know we left off at nursing homes and talking about the craziness of putting COVID patients in a nursing home, which is not valuing life at all. You can value life and still live yours. It's possible. Okay, so in part of this, I was talking about teaching virtue. So an example I can give is with one of my own children. And if they come into the video, they might, because they're home now. I'm not home alone anymore. They're home from school. My youngest, who is 6, she was dealing with a bully at school and didn't want to go because she said he had called her names and called her dumb and stupid. And I looked at her and I said, well, are you dumb? Are you stupid? And she said, no. And I said, then don't listen to him. And I said, do you know what the Bible says? And she said, what? And I told her, the Bible says, love your enemy and bless them when they're mean to you. And the reaction she gave me was like, excuse me? Yeah, right. Do you want to say hello? No? Okay. But isn't that how we all are? Isn't that one of the most tough scriptures in the Bible, is love your neighbor as yourself and bless those who curse you and who persecute you? I think that that's a good mirror of how virtuous we are, are we following that one or not. Anyway, that's one of the ways I teach my children is I take them right to the scripture. And now we are going to do a little bit of reading. We're going to read the Bible. And we're going to read some Federalist 51. Before we get to the Bible, we'll talk about the government. Actually, yes, because let's just finish talking about a lack of virtue. I think, as I go with this YouTube channel, everything is going to come back to this. That's why I started with the virtuous people, because all of the problems that we have in America come back to a lack of morality and a lack of standards and a lack of virtue in people's lives. And I don't think we should give excuses anymore about, oh, well, they just are lying because this happened to them. No, they're just stealing because they feel like they need reparations for all the racism that's happened to them. No. They need to have an abortion because it'll ruin their life if they don't. No, absolutely not. That's one of the things that the church needs to get better at, is taking care of women who find themselves in a situation where they would think about having an abortion. It should not be so that Christians are so judgy to look at, especially Christian girls who make mistakes and get pregnant. And what should we do? We should be loving those people. That's what Abba's house does here in Riverton. They love the women who come in there. They love on them and they help them with their medical care. Yes, honey, you can get a spoon and you can eat one of those. It's pudding with custard, I think. They were on sale at the store. Gotta love a sale, right? Gotta love stuff when it's on clearance because it's almost out of date. Then you buy them for $1. Practical and frugal patriots with many children. So I'm going to read out of Federalist 51. This is talking about the separation of powers. Now I'm going off on a bunch of different topics today, but they kind of all tie together because it comes to what is happening in our government today and tomorrow. The elections in Georgia today, the January 6th tomorrow, who knows what's going to happen. And I talked yesterday about the government trying to get all its power to itself instead of the constituents having the power and the people in charge. I say in charge very loosely. Not the people who are supposed to be representing us, not representing us in the way that we would like them to. Because what? They're in it for themselves. Most of them. We read that yesterday. So in Federalist 51, who wrote this one? Madison. Of course, he was the one who wrote all about the legislature. So great. So Madison says, this is a little long, to what expedient then shall we finally resort for maintaining in practice the necessary partition of the power among the several departments, separation of powers, as laid down in this Constitution? The only answer that can be given is that all these exterior provisions are found to be inadequate. Yes, you can say hi.
Hi.
Hello. This is the one I was talking about, the kindergartner one. Her name is what? Elin. That's right. And she's in kindergarten. Back to the papers. Thank you, honey, for saying hello. I'm sure everybody thinks you're cute. The only answer that can be given is, talking about the separation of powers, that as all these exterior provisions are found to be inadequate, the defect must be supplied by so contriving the interior structure of the government as that its several constituent parts may, by their mutual relations, be the means of keeping each other in their proper places. Without presuming to undertake a full development of this important idea, I will hazard a few general observations which may perhaps place it in a clearer light, and enable us to form a more correct judgment of the principles and structure of the government planned by the Convention. In order to lay a due foundation for that separate and distinct exercise of the different powers of government, which to a certain extent is admitted on all hands to be essential to the preservation of liberty, it is evident that each department should have a will of its own, and consequently should be so constituted that the members of each should have as little agency as possible in the appointment of the members of the others. Were this the principle rigorously adhered to, it would require that all the appointments for the supreme, executive, legislative, and judiciary magistrates should be drawn from the same fountain of authority, the people, through, and it's actually written that, it says the people, through channels having no communication whatever with one another. Perhaps such a plan of constructing the several departments would be less difficult in practice than it may be in contemplation appear. Some difficulties, however, and some additional expense would attend the execution of it. Some deviations, therefore, from the principle must be admitted. In the constitution of the Judiciary Department, in particular, it might be inexpedient to insist rigorously on the principle. First, because peculiar qualifications being essential in the members, the primary consideration ought to be select that mode of choice which best secures these qualifications. Secondly, because the permanent tenure by which the appointments are held in that department must soon destroy all sense of dependence on the authority conferring them. It is equally evident that the members of each department should be as little dependent as possible on those of the others. For the emoluments annexed to their offices. Were the executive magistrate or the judges not independent of the legislature in this particular, their independence in every other would be merely nominal. Yes. No, you may not have whipped cream. You may have the blueberries. Thank you. You can have the blueberries. That's fine. I should have fed snacks first before I started this. Gotta love it. Practical, patriot, mother. The real deal. Where was I? Independence in every other would be merely nominal. But the great security against a gradual concentration of the several powers in the same department consists in giving to those who administer each department the necessary constitutional means and personal motives to resist encroachments of the others. The provision for defense must be in this, as in all other cases, be made commensurate to the danger of attack. Ambition must be made to counteract ambition. The interest of the man must be connected with the constitutional rights of the place. It may be a reflection on human nature that such devices should be necessary to control the abuses of government. But what is government itself but the greatest of all reflections on human nature? If men were angels, no government would be necessary. If angels were to govern men, neither external nor internal controls on government would be necessary. In framing a government which is to be administered, by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this. You must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself. A dependence on the people is no doubt the primary control on the government, but experience has taught mankind the necessity of auxiliary precautions. Perfect. That's exactly why people are trying to contest the electors tomorrow, is because of the knowledge that there is corruption and government has delved into the deep depths of the swamp. And yes, I use that word, the swamp. And that is why the Founding Fathers put those auxiliary precautions in there to protect the people from the government, because they knew when people get in government, they get tyrannical if they get too much power. And that is what's been happening. Government has been accumulating power for years, more and more and more and more and more and more power. And they want to just solidify that. They want to solidify it. Yes.
Hi.
What?
Hello.
I am recording.
I know.
That's great. Do you want to say hi too, since everybody's popping their head in today?
Yeah. Hi.
Everybody's excited to be in a YouTube video. So, what an example of what is going on and why the Founding Fathers put the separation of powers in place in the Constitution to hold each other in check. And what is going to happen? What will happen if all three branches of government are run amok by the left? I don't even want to say Democrats, because old-fashioned Democrats are good, but these new Democrats are so far left. They want to completely change the Constitution. And it's not outdated. The Constitution will work today just like it worked then, just like the Bible works today, just like it worked then. It's a necessary document to the I can't even think of the word. To the future of our country. I'll just say that. It's a necessary document to keep our country going, so it doesn't implode on itself. So I'm proud of the people who are objecting tomorrow. I'm gonna be totally honest with that. I'm proud of them, that they're standing up for the people who would like to at least have some semblance of fair election. And don't tell me that, for those of you who might watch this who are anti-Trump, don't tell me that there wasn't any fraud, because there's fraud in every election. It was just more widespread in many different channels this time. And there shouldn't be any more of it because we should weed it all out at this time or we're never going to have a free election again. Nobody will ever trust an election. Not the left, not the right. It's ridiculous. It's a very historic time we're living in. The Constitution is on the judgment seat, like George Washington said. So I'm going to go into another part of this talk real quick here before I end. And that is instituting some virtue in ourselves, whether you're a Christian or not. I'm going to be reading from the Bible, but that doesn't matter because the Bible is full of good nuggets of truth. Good nuggets of truth. Now I should have marked all my pages before I started, but that's okay. We will get it together here in just a second. The Bible is a beautiful book. Psalm 139. Okay? Ready? I'm going to read the whole thing. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know my sitting down and my rising up. You understand my thought afar off, and you comprehend my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all of my ways. For there is not a word on my tongue. But behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You have hedged me behind and before, and laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, and it is high, and I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend into heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall take hold of me. If I say, surely the darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light around me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as the day, and the darkness and the light are both alike to you. You formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. How precious are your thoughts towards me, O God. How great is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would be more in number than the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. Depart from me, therefore, you bloodthirsty men, for they speak against you wickedly, and your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate them, O Lord, who hate you? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with perfect hatred, and I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Trust me and know my anxieties, and see if there's any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. So most of that I read for the first part. About God knowing where we are when we lie down, and knowing what we're going to say before we even say it, and knowing that our frame was not hidden from him, even when he made us in our mother's wombs, and had our days written for us before we had even lived one of them. And that is why we speak for the unborn, because the unborn, God has a plan for them. They are you. They are me. We were also once unborn. How dare we say that the unborn doesn't matter and that a woman has a right to end a life? If that life was outside of her body, if she had given birth to that baby and then killed it 2 weeks later, she'd be charged with murder. Now, do I think people who have abortions should be charged with murder? No. But I don't think that our taxpayer dollars should be paying for it, because abortion is wrong. It's wrong. God knows us before we're even born. He knows how many days we have. He knows how many hairs are on our head. He knows when we lie down and when we go and when we rise up. And if you're alive today and watching this, it's because he gave you breath this morning. He gave you breath. All right. I'm also going to go to 2 Peter 1. Because how do we become virtuous? How do we instill virtue in others? By helping them, I would say, look to the Lord. And if not look to the Lord, look to the Creator, or look to the good. And what is good? It's God. God is what's good. It is. He is. God is what's good. He's really the only answer to all of our problems in America. And we can use godly biblical principles to bring forth positive change for our country without shoving Jesus down people's throats, because I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, and that's fine. We can live in virtue and holiness and righteousness and be a good example on what living a moral life is, and make positive change for people by working together in wisdom and love and not fighting all the time. Christians need to love better. All right. Sorry. 2 Peter 1 gives us a good example of what to focus on. And focusing on these things helps us to live well. Whether you're a Christian or not, you can think about good things, right? Think about the things that are pure and holy and lovely. 2 Peter 1. Grace and peace be multiplied to you in the knowledge of God and of Jesus our Lord, as his divine power has given to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through the knowledge of him who called us by glory and virtue, which have been given to us exceedingly great and precious promises, that through these you may be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. But also, for this very reason, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue. Whatever faith you have, mine is in Jesus. Add to your faith a virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge self-control. Or we talked about ruling yourself yesterday. Self-control. To self-control, perseverance. To perseverance, godliness. To godliness, brotherly kindness. And to brotherly kindness, love. For in these things, if these things are yours and abound, you will neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of Jesus. For he who lacks these things is short-sighted, even to blindness, and has forgotten that he was cleansed from his old sins. Hallelujah. And then I'm going to read out of Philippians 4. Yes, I love you too, Jonas. Amen. We're going to go to Philippians 4, not 13. I'm sure most of you know that one. Okay, Philippians 4. Sorry, this is a teeny tiny Bible with teeny tiny writing. That's why I have to wear my glasses. Philippians 4:8. Finally, brethren, ready? Whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. You can do that whether you're a Christian or not, thinking about the things that are true and noble and lovely and good and just and virtuous and pure and holy. Think on those things. When we meditate on evil things, we get bitter and we get angry. And that is no way to live. That is no way to keep a country going through hatred and bitterness and greed and anger. Think about things that are lovely and true and noble. Taking care of others. Loving each other. Feeding the poor. The things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do, and the God of peace will be with you. Isn't that good? It's so good. You think on the lovely things, the good things. That's a way to instill virtue in your children. Don't look at bad things, look at the good things. I mean, we see the bad things, and what are we going to do when we see the bad things? Oh, maybe do something about them, right? Okay. Proverbs, we're just going to read a couple verses out of Proverbs here about virtue. Proverbs 10:9. If you have a Bible, you can take it out. I lead a Bible study on Fridays at my church, and I just love reading the Bible out loud. It is one of my favorite things to do. There's something about hearing it that's different than just reading it, and that's why I like to read it out loud. Because faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word of God. All right, Proverbs 10:9. He who walks with integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will become known. He who winks with the eye, this is verse 10, he who winks with the eye causes trouble, but a prating fool will fall. The mouth of the righteous is a well of life, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Hatred stirs up strife, but love covers a multitude of sins. Wisdom is found on the lips of him who has understanding, but a rod is for the back of him who is devoid of understanding. Wise people store up knowledge, but the mouth of the foolish is near destruction. Hallelujah. Oh, that's good. Haha. Verse 19. In the multitude of words, sin is not lacking, but he who restrains his lips is wise. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, and the heart of the wicked is worth little. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for lack of wisdom. That's good. All right, and one more, Proverbs 31, another talking about virtue. This one's talking about a virtuous woman. It's one of the things that drives me crazy about the feminist movement is how not virtuous those feminists are. I am thankful for the original feminists who gave us the right to vote. Wyoming, the very first place that allowed a woman to vote, and also the very first place to have a woman governor here in Wyoming. We're known as the equality state. I'm going to start at verse 10. Who can find a virtuous wife? For her worth is far above rubies. The heart of her husband safely trusts her, so he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not evil all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax. So not only is she virtuous, she loves her husband. She works hard. She has a job. She seeks wool and flax and willingly works with her hands. She is like the merchant ships, and she brings her food from afar. She also rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and a portion for her maidservants. She's a business person. She considers a field and buys it, and from her profits she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and strengthens her arms. She's strong. So women, don't think you have to be a tiny, mousy little woman. A virtuous wife is strong and loving and cunning and kind. She strengthens her arms. She perceives that her merchandise is good, and her lamp does not go out by night. She stretches out her hands to the distaff, and her hand holds the spindle, and she extends her hand to the poor. Yes, she reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household is clothed with scarlet. She makes a tapestry for herself. Her clothing is fine linen and purple, and her husband is known in the gates, and when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them, and supplies sashes for the merchants. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in time to come. And she opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. Do you see kindness coming from a lot of the women who are part of the women's lib movement right now? Is there kindness coming from their lips? Or is it filth and vile hatred and bitterness? It is not this virtuous woman. It's women full of anger. It's sad. It's sad to see my fellow women behaving that way. and yelling and screaming profanities at each other. If I went to a rally like that and wore a Trump hat, my fun Trump hat that I have, I probably would get beat up from wearing a hat because I have a differing opinion. Since when is that okay in America? It isn't. And we need to stand firm and strong and wise and prudent and practical. Strength and honor are her clothing. She shall rejoice in the times to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness. She watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. She is not idle, lazy. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, he praises her. Many daughters have done well, but you excel them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is passing. But a woman who fears the Lord, she shall be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her own works praise her in the gates. So that's just a great scripture to teach your daughters and to teach yourself, right? Be strong, be courageous, be kind, be loving, be faithful, be truthful. Teach truthfulness, holiness, virtue. Do things that have merit, right? I'm looking at my definition of virtue here. Be potent with your words. Speak when necessary and let those words mean something. Don't speak idly. Gossip. Don't gossip. Unless you have something constructive to say to the person, don't talk about that person behind their back, ladies. Gossip is not virtuous. That's something I didn't talk about. And that's something that women struggle with. And I would say probably men, maybe a little bit. But mostly women. We need to knock that off and stand up for each other and help each other. Straighten each other's crowns. Be beneficial to society and not lazy. Be a person of valor, like our military men and women. People of valor. People who are not afraid to fight for what's right. That's what we need to be. Not afraid to fight for what's right. So think about all those virtue, all those definitions of virtue, all the things that we're failing at in American society: drunkenness, drugs, infidelity, hatred, deceit, abortion, poverty, ignoring poverty, not taking care of our neighbor, abuse, all of those things that we talked about today. It's a lot, and this is going to be a long video, but watch it, share it. These things are important conversations that we need to have in order to get our country back on track, because it's becoming quite lawless. And those of us who try and live a virtuous life aren't doing anything about it. And now we need to stand up. It is almost too late, but it's never too late. It's never too late. So stand up and fight for what's right. Teach your children how to be virtuous. And I'll see you next time. Bye.
Thanks for watching The Practical Patriot. Like and subscribe below.
That's right.